Offshore banking in St. Vincent and the Grenadines has, well, a colorful history. And while this tiny island nation employed the same strategy that many other Caribbean islands have used, there are some big differences that might make it worth exploring, or not. In today's video, we're going to share who should and who shouldn't consider banking in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. But before we dive in, make sure you hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you get alerted every time we post new banking opportunities. Here at GlobalBanks, we help individuals and businesses unlock the benefits of international banking by helping them find and open accounts with the best banks around the world. Before we get started, we have a free non-resident banking starter guide designed to help non-resident and foreigners open bank accounts around the world, including people who are considering accounts in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So, don't forget to download your copy using the link in the description below. Now, back to account opening in SVG. Here's a quick rundown. In 1979, the former British colony gained independence. In the 90s, they passed a flurry of new laws to jumpstart the financial sector. The focus was on offshore companies, international banks, trusts, mutual funds, and insurance companies. And by 1999, St. Vincent and the Grenadines had a whopping 28 banks registered on the island. Things seemed to be going well. And for years, St. Vincent and the Grenadines carried on as a relatively unknown tax haven, growing steadily. But then, correspondent banks started fleeing the country, leaving international banks in St. Vincent and the Grenadines without any way to transact or send money abroad. St. Vincent and the Grenadines had been marked as a high-risk jurisdiction. Bank regulations were weak, compliance standards were poor, and many banks were letting anyone open accounts without basic due diligence checks. And as we've discussed before in previous videos, when banks don't conduct basic due diligence and put proper KYC and AML safeguards in place, they become a magnet for unsavory clients and illegal activity. So, if those small banks were accepting criminals, tax evaders, and money launderers, the correspondent banks, by default, were as well. What made the situation worse was that correspondent banks around the world were under intense pressure thanks to a number of high-profile money laundering scandals. So overnight, St. Vincent and the Grenadines became the poster child for why opening an account at a small shoebox bank with shoddy KYC and weak regulation is a horrible idea. And by the way, this isn't an issue with banking in the Caribbean. There are still solid banks in the region that many people can benefit from. But the problem in St. Vincent and the Grenadines doesn't appear to be going away. Fortunately for the island, some people still find St. Vincent and the Grenadines wildly attractive for certain other activities. I'm going to outline those in a minute. But first, why is SVG an important story when it comes to banking? Well, St. Vincent and the Grenadines is a great example of what not to do, what you should watch out for, and how a country's banking system can go from decent to bad really fast. Today, there are about 7 banks in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Only 3 of those are international banks. And only one of the international banks has a Class A license. Not surprisingly, correspondent banking relationships are unstable here due to de-risking. And that means St. Vincent and the Grenadines' entire offshore banking system is vulnerable. It's 100% reliant on shaky third-party relationships in order to complete basic transactions. You see, everything fell apart between 2013 and 2019 when the country was thrust into the spotlight and gained notoriety for all the wrong reasons. So much bad stuff came to light. In 2015, banks started losing correspondent banking relationships. In 2016, the Panama Papers hit and Loyal Bank was exposed for opening accounts without verifying ultimate beneficial owners. In 2017, Paul Manafort was exposed for stashing millions here and got busted for money laundering. Also in 2017, banks with any concern for what was left of their reputation re-domiciled their operations, including acquiring IFE licenses in Puerto Rico. In 2018, the first banking executive was criminally convicted by the US government for thwarting FATCA and helping Americans hide money. And also in 2018, Loyal Bank lost all of its corresponding banking relationships, CBRs, was indicted by the US government for securities fraud and money laundering. It's been a rough ride. The optics aren't great, and there's been some reputational damage to the banking sector. So, needless to say, we don't suggest opening bank accounts here. In fact, for pretty much any client, there are much better banking options elsewhere. But like I said, some people are still attracted to SVG, but if not for banking, then why? Well, today people come to St. Vincent and the Grenadines for cheap, loosely regulated IBCs and trusts. The country also has some of the cheapest banking licenses in the world, though they come with a reputation that's a little hard to shake. Beyond that, St. Vincent and the Grenadines has welcomed unregulated Forex brokers fleeing stricter regulation in other countries. Nearly every other country in the world besides St. Vincent and the Grenadines has tough licensing, strict capitalization requirements, and trading restrictions. In other words, if you want to start up a regulated Forex brokerage in any other country, you'll spend at least $20,000 to $50,000 US just to acquire the license to operate. And that's for the cheapest possible options in low-quality jurisdictions. In Europe and developed markets, it's significantly higher. The point is, Forex licenses are expensive to acquire and maintain. And Forex brokers in regulated markets are hit with all sorts of new rules. Plus, there's the burden of compliance, reporting, leverage limits, trading restrictions, etc. But not in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Instead, people are just buying a St. Vincent and the Grenadines IBC and calling themselves a Forex broker. In fact, the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Financial Services Authority, VSG FSA, doesn't even offer any licenses for Forex brokers at all. People are buying an IBC, slapping together a website, figuring out their banking and payment processing relationships, and starting an unregulated Forex business. They tend to target customers in undeveloped markets, offer absurd terms, and execute trades that would never be allowed in any country with an ounce of common sense. In fact, many large brokers in unregulated markets will sometimes set up unregulated brokerage arms in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Then, when they have customers who want significant amounts of leverage, they redirect them to their entity on the island. To be clear, we're not recommending any of this. We're just sharing what we're seeing in the market. And if you're looking to trade Forex, we'd highly recommend using regulated brokers in strong jurisdictions that offer customer protections. So, what does all this mean? Well, if you're looking to open offshore bank accounts in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, there are probably better options for you elsewhere. This is true regardless of who you are, where you're from, what kind of business you own, or how limited your options are. To start opening accounts today, all you need to do is join our flagship service, GlobalBanks Insider. With GlobalBanks Insider, you'll get instant access to our entire archive of banking intelligence reports. And you'll also get access to the GlobalBanks database, home to more than 250 banks from 50 plus countries, including detailed bank profiles, client preferences, and a whole lot more. Finally, you'll also get real-time analyst support from our team of experts, ready to answer your most pressing banking questions and to make suggestions on which international banks you should consider to meet your objectives. To learn more, just click on the link in the description below. Before signing off, don't forget to hit subscribe and go check out our other videos to gain more insights into the international banking world. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.